documentary this evening is called Call Me Dad. It's a film about domestic violence and personal stories of men who are trying to heal their most precious relationships. And please welcome the director of Call Me Dad, Sophie Weiser. Sophie.
This year, 2 women each week have been murdered in Australia. It's a shocking statistic. Most of these women have been murdered by men, and most of these men knew their victims. And probably at one stage said to their victims, "I love you." We hear about some of the worst stories on the news. What we hear less about is that millions of women and over 1.4 million children are living with family violence today. When I started first learning about the prevalence of family violence, I thought family violence was just about physical abuse, pushing and hitting. But what I've learned is that family violence is also about emotional abuse and psychological abuse. It's confronting when we learn that so many of us have seen this and not recognized it as abuse. We don't have to live like this. And once we start understanding this problem, we can actually change it. The cost of family violence in Australia in 2009 was $13.6 billion. This takes into account police hours. This takes into account the medical cost of caring for people, mental health costs involved with dealing with people who've been traumatised and terrorised. What's been calculated is that if we don't address this problem, the cost of family violence will rise to $15.6 billion by 2022 if we don't take the right action. Call Me Dad is a film about a group of fathers who recognise that they are abusive. They recognise that their behaviours are not healthy, they're not safe, and they're hurting the people that they love. What this film is going to do is bring focus onto men and away from women. When we talk about family violence, as Rosie Batty has really effectively pointed out in her advocacy work, we often criticise women. Why don't they leave? Why don't they call the police? Why are they hiding and covering for the man in their lives? But what this film will do is bring the focus onto men. And bring the focus onto men in a way that's going to engage men. Because a lot of men, when we start talking about family violence, suddenly feel really uncomfortable because it's like we're criticising them and their culture. What we're doing in this film is not just talking about them, but talking about us. We're talking about our culture, the way that we support certain kinds of masculinity that perpetuate these cycles of violence. I'm going to show you a taster of what we filmed. We're not finished Call Me Dad, we're editing at the moment. And what you'll see here is a teaser, a sense of the story we wish to tell. Have a look.
It would always get out of hand.
He was enraged, he was screaming his head off.
I just flipped, just had no control.
I smashed up my own car, our family car, in front of everybody. I didn't have control and I wanted it back.
We need to look at ourselves and be the best people we can be for our children's sake, because we are the role models. And that's the only way you break the cycle.
I noticed in my relationships as I was growing up, if I'd get angry or things weren't going my way, I started to sound like my father.
It was scary for me knowing that I got to that point, and I was ashamed. What's at stake is my family.
She said, "I'm scared of you." And that was the most painful thing that I've ever heard come out of Suzanne's mouth.
We all have a role to play. We can change the culture. We owe that to the many, many victims that do not always have a voice.
My marriage fell apart because I was an abuser.
Most of them come believing that they're out of control, that they've got a short fuse, that they have no control over it. And then as we go through the education program, it's about this is a choice.
Some of you will say to me that you're not an angry man, you're not a violent man, and then suddenly, bang, attacks. What's sad is a lot of us, before you came here, have no idea that effect that it is having on your wife and your children. That they are walking on eggshells around you. The biggest reward I feel is when they reach that moment in their relationship where everyone feels safe, there's a closeness. We'll get a story where a guy says, just out of the blue, she came and gave me this cuddle. Oh, a child will do that. I love you, Daddy. That's the reward.
All I'm finding, all that snow.
So we'll finish this film at the end of June, and once it's made, we have 2 key impact goals that we need help with. The first is we wish to do a national screening tour with the film. That involves reaching into communities, finding a host who wants to show this film to his or her community, and working with that person to run an event where we show the film, and then where a discussion is facilitated after the film about stories and the issues raised. We feel it's really important that people go away from that screening with something, some information. So we seek your help in raising $10,000 to write and research an audience information kit so that those people who come to that screening go away with information and resources that they can take to their family, to their friends, to their workplace. So that's our first impact goal, and we feel it's really important because this film raises issues for people, personal issues and personal perceptions about their own relationships. The second goal is we wish to take this film to Canberra in October. We wish to screen it to federal politicians and bring key experts and advocates to that screening so that they can see that something needs to be done, not just talk, but money needs to flow such that families have resources around them to deal with the impact of family violence. There's a lot of conversation at the moment about family violence, and we feel that this film could arrive at just the right time to really change the tide and stop this problem.